Admiral Park Tae-ho stood at the observation deck of the UEN's horizon and watched the stars pass by like rivers of light. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in silence. They all knew what today meant. 50 years ago, humanity had received its first message from the stars. 50 years ago, the Galactic Council had lifted humanity from Earth and given them a place among the stars. Today, they would celebrate that gift. The Horizon was humanity's pride. It was the largest ship ever built by human hands, carrying 3,000 crew members and the most important delegation Earth had ever sent. Dr. Lee Yuna stood beside Tae-ho, her diplomatic robes perfectly pressed, her face calm but her eyes sharp. She had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. "Admiral," she said softly, "we are approaching the council station." Tae-ho nodded. Through the viewport, he could see it now. The council station was a massive ring of metal and light, spinning slowly in the darkness. Ships from a dozen different species moved around it like insects around a flower. Each ship was different. Some were smooth and silver. Others were rough and dark. But they all came here for the same reason. This was the heart of galactic civilization. The Horizon docked without trouble. Tae-ho led the delegation through the wide corridors of the station. Aliens of all shapes watched them pass. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had no faces at all. Tae-ho kept his expression neutral. He had seen many strange things in his 60 years of life. Nothing surprised him anymore. The council chamber was a vast circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from 12 species sat in their designated areas. At the highest seat sat High Chancellor Mordris of the Aldrani Empire. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes like black glass. When he looked at the human delegation, Tae-ho felt something cold run down his spine. Dr. Yuna stepped forward and bowed. "High Chancellor," she said, "honored members of the Galactic Council. Humanity thanks you for this celebration. 50 years ago, you found us alone in our small corner of the galaxy. You gave us technology. You gave us knowledge. You gave us hope. Today, we wish to give something back." She raised her hand, and an aide brought forward a small silver case. Yuna opened it carefully. Inside was a vial of blue liquid that glowed softly. "This is a cure," Yuna said. "A cure for the Valorian plague that has killed millions across 3 of your worlds. Our scientists worked for 15 years to create it. We offer it freely, as a gift, as thanks for everything you have given us." The chamber fell silent. Tae-ho watched the faces of the council members. Most showed surprise. A few showed something that might have been gratitude. But Chancellor Mordris showed nothing. His black eyes stared at the vial, and then at Yuna, and then at Tae-ho. There was no warmth in that gaze. Only calculation. The celebration continued through the night. Tae-ho attended the formal dinner, shook hands with ambassadors, and smiled until his face hurt. But he could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. He noticed that the Aldrani guards seemed to be everywhere. He noticed that the other council members avoided speaking to humans when Aldrani were nearby. He noticed too many things that did not add up. Late that night, Yuna came to his quarters. Her face was pale. "We need to talk," she said. She told him about Counselor Bryn. He was an elder of the Valorian species, one of those saved by the human cure. He had found her after the dinner and pulled her into a quiet corner. His words had been quick and frightened. "Leave," he had said. "Leave tonight. Do not wait for the morning session. Trust nothing you hear. Trust no one who wears the council's seal. Your people are in danger." Before Yuna could ask more, Bryn had disappeared into the crowd. Tae-ho listened without expression. When she finished, he walked to the viewport and looked out at the station. A dozen warships floated in the darkness nearby. He had thought they were an honor guard. Now, he was not so sure. "Wake the crew," he said quietly. "Prepare the ship for emergency departure." But it was already too late. The alarm started 30 minutes later. Tae-ho reached the bridge just as the first council warship moved into position between the horizon and open space. Then, another ship came. And another. Within minutes, the human fleet was surrounded by a wall of alien weapons. Chancellor Mordris appeared on every screen. His voice was cold and formal. "Citizens of Earth," he said, "the Galactic Council has determined that your species presents a threat to galactic stability. Your advancement has been too rapid. Your technology has grown too quickly. Your population spreads too fast. For the safety of all civilized peoples, the Council has voted to implement immediate containment measures." Tejo gripped the railing until his knuckles turned white. "All human colonies will be placed under Council administration." Mordris continued. "All human vessels will be impounded. All humans currently off-world will be detained for processing. The Covenant of Stars, which guaranteed human sovereignty, is hereby dissolved. This decision is final." The screen went dark. Around Tejo, his crew sat in shocked silence. Some had tears in their eyes. Others had faces hard with anger. But no one spoke. There was nothing to say. In the span of 5 minutes, everything humanity had built among the stars had been taken away. Yuna's voice broke the silence. "They planned this," she whispered. "They planned this from the beginning. The celebration, the gathering of our fleet, all of it. They wanted us here. They wanted us trapped." Tejo turned to face his crew. His heart was breaking, but his voice was steady. "Send a message to Earth," he said. "Tell them what has happened. Tell them to prepare." He looked out at the Council warships, at the species that had just betrayed everything they claimed to stand for. "And tell them," he said softly, "that this is not the end." The news reached Earth in waves. First came the official Council broadcast, cold and formal, announcing humanity's containment. Then came the desperate messages from colony worlds reporting Council ships entering their space. Finally came Admiral Tejo's transmission. Recorded in secret and sent through channels the Council did not know about, President Kang Hana watched all of it from the Emergency Command Center deep beneath the mountains of Korea. She was 53 years old, small and thin, with gray streaks in her black hair. She had been president for 6 years. In all that time, she had never imagined anything like this. Around her sat the leaders of every set. Major nation on Earth, they had come as fast as they could, abandoning their own capitals, because they knew what this meant. This was not a crisis for one country. This was a crisis for all of humanity. "How long do we have?" Hannah asked. General Yoon Jae-sung, commander of Earth's defense forces, pulled up a map on the central screen. Red dots showed Council fleet movements. Blue dots showed human positions. There was far more red than blue. "Based on their current speed," Jae-sung said, "the first Council warships will reach Earth orbit in approximately 30 days. Our outer colonies will fall within 2 weeks. We cannot stop them." The room erupted in angry voices. Some demanded that humanity fight. Others argued for surrender. A few suggested negotiation, pleading, begging the Council to reconsider. Hannah let them argue. She understood their fear. She felt it herself. But fear would not save her people. "Enough," she said, and the room fell silent. "Admiral Tejo has a proposal. I want everyone to listen." The screen flickered, and Tejo's face appeared. He looked tired. He looked old, but his eyes still burned with the same fire Hannah had seen when she first met him 30 years ago, when they were both young officers dreaming of the stars. "We cannot win a direct war," Tejo said. "The Council has more ships, more weapons, more experience. If we fight them fleet to fleet, we will lose. All of us. Every last human being." He paused. "But we do not have to fight. Not yet. The Council expects us to stand and die like every other species they have crushed. They expect us to be predictable. They expect us to be afraid." He leaned forward, proposed the Exodus protocol. "We scatter. We take every ship that can fly and disappear into the dark spaces between stars. Avoid the empty regions that no species has ever mapped because they fear the darkness. The Council will not follow us there. They will be too afraid. And then what?" demanded the Chinese delegate. "We hide forever? We become refugees in our own galaxy?" "No," Tejo said. we grow. We learn, we build. And when we are ready, when we have become something the Council cannot defeat, we come back. The room was silent for a long moment. What about Earth? Hannah asked quietly. What about our home? Teo's face softened. We cannot save it. Not now. The Council will take Earth. They will occupy it. But they will not destroy it. A dead planet has no value to them. They will wait for us to return, and when we do not come, they will forget about us. They will believe we died in the void, and that is when we will strike. Hannah closed her eyes. She thought of the mountains outside Seoul, where she had played as a child. She thought of the oceans, the forests, the cities full of people who had no idea what was coming. She thought of everything humanity would lose, and then she thought of everything humanity could become. Begin the evacuation, she said. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Ships launched from every spaceport on Earth, carrying as many people as they could hold. Research stations packed their most important work into cargo containers. Military vessels loaded weapons and supplies. Civilian transports crammed families into spaces meant for cargo. Not everyone could leave. There was not enough room. Millions would have to stay behind to face Council occupation and whatever came after. Hannah made the impossible choices herself because she would not ask anyone else to bear that weight. She picked who would go and who would stay. She sent some people to freedom and condemned others to chains. On the final day, she stood on the observation platform of the last transport ship to leave Earth. Below her, the planet turned slowly, blue and green and beautiful. Behind her, the survivors of humanity watched in silence. Commander Shin Du-yan's voice crackled over the radio. His fleet was holding position at the Tau Ceti relay, blocking the Council advance. His ships were outnumbered 10-1. Everyone knew he was not coming back. Madam President, Du-yan said, the Council fleet is engaging. We will hold them as long as we can. Get our people to safety. Hannah pressed her hand against the glass. Commander, I cannot ask you to do this. You are not asking, Du-yan replied. She could hear the smile in his voice. This is my choice. This is our choice. Humanity remembers, Madam President. Make sure they never forget us. The radio fell silent. In the distance, Hannah could see flashes of light. Ships dying. Good people dying. Buying time with their blood so that others might live. The transport ship began to move. Earth grew smaller in the viewport. The flashes of battle faded into darkness. Hannah turned to face the survivors. Thousands of faces looked back at her. Some were crying. Some were angry. All were afraid. She took a deep breath. We are leaving our home, she said. We are leaving our friends. We are leaving everything we have ever known. The Council believes this is our end. They believe we will fade into the darkness and disappear. She straightened her spine. They are wrong. We are not running away. We are running toward something. Toward a future they cannot imagine. Toward a day when we will return stronger than ever before. Her voice rose. Go into the darkness. Survive. Build. Remember. And when the time comes, come back to me. Come back to Earth. Come back home. She looked out at the stars, at the infinite void that would be their home for decades to come. Go, she whispered, then come back to me. The fleet scattered into the night. Earth fell behind them. And in the silence of space, humanity began its long journey into the unknown. 50 years passed in the darkness between stars. Captain Park Ji-won was born in the void. She had never seen Earth's sun. She had never felt rain on her face or wind in her hair. Her whole life had been spent on ships and stations, floating in the endless black. But she knew Earth. Every human child knew Earth. They learned about it before they could walk. They dreamed about it before they could speak. Ji-won was 32 years old now, tall and lean, with her grandfather's sharp eyes and her grandmother's steady hands. She commanded the stealth cruiser Ghost of Seoul, the fastest ship in the Hidden Fleet. Her crew called her the Shadow Captain because she could slip through Council space without leaving a trace. Tonight, she was hunting. The Council supply convoy moved through the Kirin sector like a slow, fat animal. 12 cargo ships, each one carrying enough food and medicine to supply a colony for a year. Four escort vessels protected them, but the escorts were lazy. They had not seen combat in decades. They had forgotten what danger felt like. Juan smiled. She would remind them. All hands, she said quietly. Prepare for attack. Remember the rules. We take the cargo. We disable the escorts. We do not kill unless we have no choice. Her first officer, Lieutenant No Sung Min, raised an eyebrow. The council killed plenty of us, Captain. Why do we show mercy? Because we are not the council, Ki-won replied. We are something better. The attack lasted 11 minutes. The ghost of Seoul appeared from nowhere, fired precise shots that disabled the escort engines, and opened the cargo bays of 6 supply ships before anyone could respond. By the time council reinforcements arrived, G1's ship was gone. Only a single message remained, broadcast on all frequencies. Humanity remembers. 300 light-years away, Dr. Baek Subin stared at a screen filled with numbers. She was 61 years old, thin and pale, with eyes that had not seen natural light in 20 years. She worked in the deepest laboratory of Hidden Station Aegis, surrounded by equipment that would have seemed like magic to the scientists of Earth. She was trying to fold space. The theory was simple. Space was not flat. It curved and bent around massive objects like fabric around stones. If you could fold that fabric, you could bring 2 distant points together. You could travel anywhere instantly. You could appear and disappear like a ghost. The practice was impossible. Every scientist in the galaxy had tried. Every scientist had failed. The energy requirements were too high. The calculations were too complex. The mathematics broke down every time. But Subin had something the other scientists did not have. She had 50 years of stolen council research. She had human creativity, wild and unpredictable. And she had a desperate need to succeed, because without this technology, humanity would never go home. She entered the final equation and pressed the activation button, the test object. A small metal sphere flickered once. Then it vanished. The sensors showed it reappearing on the other side of the station, exactly where the calculations predicted. Subin sank into her chair. Her hands were shaking. Tears ran down her cheeks. I did it, she whispered. I actually did it. Within a week, the news spread through every hidden human settlement. Dr. Baek had cracked the secret of dimensional folding. Humanity could now travel faster than the Council, strike harder than the Council, and vanish before the Council could respond. The tide was beginning to turn in the shadows of Council space. Agent Choi Mira received the news through encrypted channels. She smiled, but only for a moment. She had work to do. Mira had spent 30 years undercover among the aliens who had betrayed her people. She had changed her face, learned their languages, adopted their customs. She had risen through the ranks of the Aldrani intelligence service until she had access to secrets that no human should ever see. Now she finally understood why humanity had been betrayed. The records were ancient, written in a language that predated the Council by thousands of years. They spoke of a prophecy, a warning passed down through generations of Aldrani priests. One day, the prophecy said, a young species would rise from a small blue world in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. This species would grow faster than any other. They would learn faster, adapt faster, create faster, and in time, they would surpass all other civilizations combined. The Aldrani had found humanity 50 years ago and recognized the signs. The young species from the small blue world, the ones who learned faster than should be possible, the ones who cured plagues that had killed millions, who built ships that rivaled the best in the galaxy, who smiled and laughed and dreamed of the stars with innocent wonder. They had seen the future that humanity represented, and they had been afraid. The betrayal had not been about security or stability. It had been about fear. The Council had looked at humanity and seen their own end. So they had tried to destroy the threat before it could grow. Mira copied the records and sent them to Admiral Tejo. Let him know, she thought. Let them all know. Let them understand what we are fighting for. On hidden station Aegis, Tejo read the message in silence. He was 127 years old now, kept alive by medical technology that humanity had developed in exile. His body was frail, but his mind was still sharp. He remembered Earth. He remembered the betrayal. He remembered everything. He called a meeting of the fleet commanders. "We know the truth now," he said. "We know why they betrayed us. They saw what we could become, and they were afraid." He looked at the faces around him. Giwan, Su-Ben, military leaders, scientists, teachers, workers, all of them children of the void. Born in exile, raised on stories of a home they had never seen. They were right to be afraid, Tejo said, but not for the reason they thought. We are not a threat because we are cruel. We are not a threat because we are violent. We are a threat because we never stop. We never give up. We never forget. He straightened his ancient spine. Begin Project Homecoming. It is time to go back. 100 years after the betrayal, the Galactic Council celebrated its greatest triumph. High Lord Valdris stood at the center of the Grand Chamber, his gray Aldrani skin shimmering under the ceremonial lights. He was the grandson of Chancellor Mordris, the one who had ordered humanity's destruction. He had grown up on stories of that glorious day when the Council had crushed the human threat before it could spread. 100 years ago, Valdris announced to the assembled delegates, "Our ancestors made a difficult decision. They saw a danger growing among the stars, a species that advanced too quickly, that spread too eagerly, that threatened the stability we had built over thousands of years. Our ancestors had the courage to act, and because of their wisdom, we are safe." The chamber erupted in applause. Valdris smiled. The humans were gone. Their fleet had scattered into the void and never returned. Their colonies had been absorbed into Council territory. Their technology had been claimed. Their people had been re-educated. Earth itself was now a quiet, controlled world where the descendants of those left behind served as laborers and servants. Humanity was a footnote in history, a cautionary tale for children. Nothing more. The lights went out. For a moment, Valdris thought it was a technical failure. Then the lights went out on the station next door, and the station beyond that, and every defense grid relay, and communication system across Council space, one by one, like stars dying. The technology of 1,000 worlds fell silent. When the lights returned, there was a single message on every screen. It was a human woman, old and fragile, with white hair and fierce eyes. Valdris recognized her from the historical records. President Kong Hannah, the one who had told her people to run. He went. Hannah's recorded voice said, "Now we have come back," the message repeated. Across every world, in every language, the dead had returned. The Battle of Aldrin Prime began 3 hours later, Captain. Park G1 stood on the bridge of her flagship. The Remembrance, as the human fleet materialized from folded space directly above the Aldrani homeworld. 300 ships, each one faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the Council had ever seen. 50 years of exile, 50 years of building in the dark. This was the result. All ships, G1 commanded, engage primary targets. Disable, do not destroy. We want prisoners, not corpses. The Council defense fleet scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Human ships moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, striking from impossible angles. Fold space technology made traditional tactics useless. By the time Council gunners locked onto a target, that target was already behind them. Admiral Tejo watched the battle from the command center of the Remembrance. He was strapped into a medical chair now, too weak to stand, but his mind was still clear. Beside him stood Dr. Lee Yuna, the diplomat who had witnessed the original betrayal. She was over 100 years old now, kept alive by the same technology that sustained Tejo. "Send the message," Tejo said. His voice, amplified by the communication system, reached every ship in the battle zone, human and alien alike. "This is Admiral Park Tejo of the human fleet. 100 years ago, your council voted to destroy my people. You took our colonies. You scattered our families. You tried to erase us from history. You failed." He paused. "We do not seek genocide. We do not want revenge. We want justice. Surrender those who voted for our destruction. Return our people. Acknowledge what you did, and we will spare your worlds." The response came quickly. 7 of the 12 council species surrendered within hours. They had never wanted the war in the first place. They had been bullied into voting against humanity by the Aldrani. Now, with human ships in orbit over their homeworlds, they were eager to change sides. 3 species fought. Their fleets were crushed within a day. Human technology was simply too advanced. Ships that had been state-of-the-art a century ago were like toys compared to what humanity had built. Only the Aldrani refused to yield. High Lord Valdris retreated to his fortress world, a heavily defended moon bristling with weapons. He broadcast a message of defiance. "You think you have one?" He screamed. "You think this is over? We knew this day would come. We prepared. We built something that would ensure humanity could never threaten us again." The sensors showed a massive energy signature building on the fortress moon. Something was powering up. Something enormous. "Genesis weapon activation confirmed," the Remembrance's tactical officer reported, her voice tight with fear. "Target coordinates locked. They are aiming at Earth." G1's blood ran cold. The Council had built a planet killer, a weapon that could destroy an entire world, and they were pointing it at humanity's home. "Can we stop it?" she demanded. "The weapon is protected by multiple shield layers. We cannot break through in time," Tejo laughed. Everyone on the bridge turned to stare at him. The old admiral was shaking with quiet laughter, tears streaming down his wrinkled face. "Let them fire," he said. "Let them fire their great weapon at Earth." Admiral G1 said carefully, "If that weapon hits Earth, billions of people will die." "No," Tejo replied. "They will not. Because Earth is not where the Council thinks it is." He smiled. And in that smile was 100 years of patience, of planning, of waiting for this exact moment. Earth has not been at those coordinates for 30 years. Dr. Beak moved it. "We folded our entire planet into a pocket dimension, safe from any weapon, hidden from any sensor. The Council has been watching an empty point in space for 3 decades. The Genesis weapon fired. A beam of pure destruction shot across the galaxy, moving faster than light. Aimed at the coordinates where Earth should have been, it hit nothing. On the fortress moon, High Lord Valdris stared at his screens in disbelief. His ultimate weapon, the guarantee of Aldrani supremacy, had destroyed empty space. "Impossible," he whispered. "That is impossible." GIH-1 opened a channel to the fortress. Her face appeared on Valdris's screen, calm and cold. "You spent 100 years preparing to destroy us," she said. "We spent 100 years becoming something you cannot destroy. Surrender now, or we will come for you." Valdris's face twisted with rage. He cut the transmission. But everyone knew it was over. The Aldrani fortress held out for 6 more hours before the shields finally failed. Human soldiers, bred and trained for a century in the void, swept through the corridors. Valdris was found hiding in his private chamber, clutching ancient prophecy scrolls that had driven his family's paranoia for generations. He was taken alive. As G1 had ordered, no executions, no revenge. Just justice. The war was over. Humanity had won. The trial of High Lord Valdris lasted 3 months. Representatives from every species in the galaxy watched as evidence was presented. Documents showing how the Aldrani had manipulated the original council vote. Records of the atrocities committed against human colonies. Testimony from those who had survived the occupation of Earth. The full scope of a century of injustice laid bare for all to see. Captain Park G1 served as the lead prosecutor. She stood before the assembled tribunal, calm and precise, presenting fact after fact in simple language that no one could misunderstand. The accused ordered the death of billions, she said. His family began a war based on fear and superstition. They looked at humanity and saw a threat. But the only threat we ever posed was to their pride. We grew too fast. We learned too quickly. We made them feel small. She turned to face Valdris directly. You called us monsters? You said we would destroy galactic civilization, but we are not the ones who built planet-killing weapons. We are not the ones who voted to enslave an entire species. We are not the ones who betrayed every principle of justice and fairness that the Council claimed to represent. Valdris said nothing. His black eyes stared at the floor. The prosecution does not seek execution, G1 continued. We do not believe in killing our enemies. Instead, we ask that the accused spend the remainder of his life on the world his family tried to destroy. Let him live among humans. Let him see what we really are. Let him understand what his fear almost cost the galaxy. The tribunal voted unanimously for conviction. Valdris was taken to Earth, where he would spend his remaining years in a small house by the sea, watched but not imprisoned. A living reminder of what happens when fear overcomes reason. With the trial complete, the real work began. The old Galactic Council was dissolved. In its place, humanity proposed a new structure. The Galactic Assembly would have no permanent leaders, no ruling species, no secret votes. Every decision would be made openly. Every species would have an equal voice. The strong would protect the weak, not exploit them. Dr. Lee Yuna, now 103 years old, drafted the founding charter. She worked for 6 months, consulting with leaders from every corner of the galaxy. When she was finished, she presented the document to the first session of the assembly. This charter is built on a simple idea, she said. Trust must be earned. It cannot be demanded. It cannot be forced. Every species here has the power to walk away if they feel wronged. Every species here has the responsibility to listen when others speak. We are not creating a government. We are creating a promise that we will try to understand each other even when it is hard. A promise that we will choose cooperation over conquest, dialogue over destruction. She paused. Humanity learned this lesson in the darkness between stars. We learned that survival means nothing without connection. We learned that strength means nothing without compassion. We hope you will learn it too. The charter was signed by representatives of all 12 species, including the Aldrani who had chosen to rebuild rather than resist. It was not perfect. Nothing would ever be perfect. But it was a beginning. 6 months later, Earth came home. Dr. Beek Subin, over 110 years old, supervised the operation from the Bridge of the Remembrance. The calculations were incredibly complex. Moving an entire planet through folded space required precision that most species could not imagine. But Subin had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Initiate return sequence, she commanded. The universe bent. Space folded, and Earth, the small blue world that humanity had been dreaming of for a century, emerged from the pocket dimension and settled. Back into its proper orbit around the sun, Admiral Park Tae-ho watched from his medical bed as the planet appeared on the view screen. He was 128 years old now, so frail that he could barely lift his head, but his eyes were still sharp. His mind was still clear. There it is, he whispered. Home. His granddaughter G1 stood beside him. Tears ran down her face, though she did not seem to notice. I never thought I would see it, she said. All my life, Earth was just a story, just a dream. Now it is real, Tae-ho replied. Now you can walk in the mountains, swim in the oceans. Feel the sun on your face. He smiled weakly. Tell me, is it beautiful? It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. The remembrance descended through the atmosphere. Below, the scattered humans who had stayed behind during the occupation looked up in wonder as ship after ship emerged from the clouds. The exiles had returned. The long night was over. The ship landed on a hilltop overlooking the Korean peninsula. Tae-ho insisted on being carried outside, wrapped in blankets against the cold. He wanted to feel Earth beneath him one more time. They placed him on the grass. Above, the sky was turning orange and pink as the sun began to rise. It was the first sunrise he had seen in 100 years. The first real sunrise any of them had seen, and Aide asked what humanity would do now. The war was over. The galaxy was at peace. What came next? Tae-ho looked at the sun rising over the mountains. He thought of his wife, dead these 60 years. He thought of his children, buried on stations that no longer existed. He thought of all the humans who had been born in the void, who had never known anything but darkness, who had kept the dream of Earth alive through sheer will and stubborn hope. What do we do now? He repeated. He laughed softly. What we have always done? We survive. We adapt. We remember. And when someone tells us we cannot rise, we rise anyway. He closed his eyes. The sun was warm on his face. President Hannah told us to go, he said. She told us to come back. We did both. We kept our promise. He smiled. Now it is time to rest. Admiral Park Tae-ho died that afternoon, surrounded by his family. With Earth's soil beneath him and Earth's sun above, he was buried on the hilltop where he had watched the sunrise, beside a simple stone marker that bore only his name and a single phrase. He went. Then he came back. 50 years later, Gi-won stood in the same spot with her own grandchildren. She was old now, her hair white, her face lined with age. But her eyes still burned with the same fire that had carried humanity through the long dark. Tell us the story again, grandmother, her youngest grandchild, begged. Ji-won smiled and looked out at the world her people had fought so hard to reclaim.
Once upon a time, she said.
There was a species that dared to dream of the stars. The galaxy tried to crush them. It failed. The galaxy tried to scatter them. They refused to break. The galaxy tried to make them forget. They remembered everything. She put her arms around her grandchildren, and in the end, she said they came home. The sun set over the mountains. The first stars began to appear. Somewhere out there, across the vast darkness of space, billions of beings were learning to trust each other for the first time, and on a small blue world in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy, humanity looked up at the stars, smiled. They had gone into the darkness. They had come back. And they would never be afraid again.